They poured concrete over my farmland while I slept, but they didn't know I had the resources to fight back and win. How would you react if I told you I now own the very HOA that tried to destroy my family's legacy? Comment below where you're watching from. The sound of engines woke me at 5:30 a.m. Big, heavy machines rumbling right outside my bedroom window. I jumped out of bed and ran to look. What I saw made my heart stop. 5 huge cement trucks were lined up along the edge of my tomato field. Men in hard hats were already pouring gray concrete over my rich black soil that my grandpa, my dad, and now me had worked for over 70 years. Hey, stop that right now, I yelled, running outside in my worn flannel pajamas, not even stopping for shoes. The sharp gravel cut into my feet, but I didn't care. My land was being stolen right in front of my eyes. A woman with perfect blonde hair stood next to the workers, holding a clipboard and wearing a bright pink blazer that looked like it cost more than my monthly farm earnings. Patricia Winters. She had moved into the fancy new Maplewood Estates next door just 8 months ago and immediately got herself elected as HOA president. "Oh, good morning, farmer," she said with a fake smile. "Beautiful day to improve the neighborhood, isn't it?" I could barely breathe. "What are you doing on my property? This is private land." Patricia's smile didn't falter. "Actually, this section falls under Maplewood Estates jurisdiction now. We need additional parking for our community pool opening next month." "That's impossible," I said, watching in horror as the concrete spread across what should have been this season's heirloom tomatoes. "My family has owned this entire 10 acres since 1951. She held out a document protected in a plastic sleeve. "The county approved our request last month. This quarter acre is officially HOA property now. See the signature right here." She pointed to a line at the bottom. "I tried to notify you, but you never answer your phone or check your email." I hadn't checked either because I was busy working sunup to sundown trying to make my small farm survive against the mega farms that were taking over everything. My neighbor Bill Johnson, who had lived in his house for 30 years before the HOA formed, walked over from his morning jog. "What's happening, Tom?" he asked. Before I could answer, Patricia jumped in. "We're finalizing the community improvement project that was in the newsletter. You voted for it last meeting, remember?" Bill looked confused. "I thought we were just adding some benches and flowers. And additional parking," Patricia said smoothly. It was all in the proposal. I noticed other neighbors gathering now, watching from the sidewalk. Some looked concerned, but nobody stepped forward to help. "This is theft," I said, my voice shaking. "I never signed anything. I never agreed to this." Patricia's smile finally dropped. "Listen, your little hobby farm is bringing down property values for everyone. The board voted. It's done." She turned to the workers. "Continue, please." I ran back to my house, leaving muddy footprints across my porch. My hands shook as I called the police. When they arrived 20 minutes later, Patricia was ready with her paperwork. The young officer barely looked at it. "Seems like a civil matter, sir," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You'll need to take it up with the county." "But they're destroying my crops right now," I said, pointing to where the concrete had already covered nearly the entire quarter acre. "I can't stop legal construction with proper permits," the officer said. I noticed how he kept glancing at Patricia's fancy SUV with the county commissioner's parking pass hanging from the mirror. After the police left, Patricia walked over to me, now surrounded by 3 other HOA board members in expensive clothes. "Look," she said in a quieter voice, "this is progress. Your farm is." She looked around at my weathered barn and greenhouse. "Quaint, but it doesn't fit the neighborhood vision anymore. We're willing to make an offer on the rest of your property." One of the men with her, Frank Taylor, spoke up. "It's very generous. Above market value." I looked at them in disbelief. "This farm has been in my family for 3 generations. It's not for sale at any price." Patricia's smile turned cold. "That's unfortunate, because this is just the beginning. The HOA has lots of rules about appropriate land use, noise levels, proper fencing." She handed me a thick binder. "You'll find you're in violation of at least 2 dozen of them. That's $100 per violation per day." I watched them walk away, back to supervise as the last of my tomato field disappeared under concrete. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter who was away at college. "Dad, did you deposit the tuition money for next semester?" I looked at my farm, smaller now by a quarter acre, and felt sick. This wasn't just about land. This was my family's legacy, my income, my daughter's education. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread out all the old property maps on the kitchen table, yellowed papers my grandfather had kept carefully in his filing cabinet. According to these, there was no way that quarter-acre belonged to anyone but me. I took photos of the maps with my phone, then started searching online for property lawyers. As I scrolled through names, a notification popped up from the local community Facebook group. Someone had posted pictures of the concrete pour, praising the HOA for finally cleaning up that eyesore farm edge. The comments were worse. About time. That farm smell was awful in summer. Property values will go up now. These were my neighbors, people who bought my fresh eggs and corn all summer. Just before midnight, my old friend Ray called. He'd been on the town council before retiring. Tom, I just heard what happened. That HOA president is married to a developer who's been buying up all the land around the county. They're building a shopping mall next year. Your farm is right in the middle of where they want to put it. I thanked him and hung up, pieces falling into place. This wasn't about a parking lot. This was about forcing me to sell my entire farm. I looked out my window at the moonlight reflecting off the fresh concrete where my tomatoes should be growing. They thought I was just a simple farmer they could bully away. But they had made one huge mistake. They didn't know that before I took over the family farm, I had worked 15 years as a real estate attorney in the city, and I still had all my contacts, my knowledge, and a stubborn streak a mile wide. I picked up my phone and called Sam Harrington, the best property rights lawyer in the state. Sam, it's Tom Wilson. I've got a battle on my hands, and I need your help to save my farm. And when we're done, I want to own every inch of that HOA that tried to steal from me. I couldn't sleep that night. How dare they pour concrete on my family's land? The next morning, I called the police, but they said it was a civil matter and couldn't help. That's when I knew I was on my own. They can't just take your land, my friend Mike said as we stared at the fresh concrete. There must be something fishy about their paperwork. I nodded, my hands shaking with anger. I need to find proof. First, I dug out my grandfather's old wooden chest from the attic. It smelled like dust and memories. Inside were yellowed papers showing the exact boundaries of our farm. According to these papers, that quarter acre was definitely mine. The county office was a maze of folders and tired workers. I spent 3 days there, going through dusty files while the clerk, Barbara, helped me search. Look at this, she whispered on the third day, pointing to a document. The HOA filed for a special permit 6 months ago. They used really old maps from 1973. My heart raced. But those maps were wrong. They were fixed in 1974. Barbara nodded. Exactly. Someone would have to know about both maps to pull this off. I hired Sam Harrington, a lawyer known for helping regular folks against big companies. His office was small but neat, with pictures of farms he'd saved covering the walls. They're trying to steal your land, Sam said, his bushy eyebrows pulling together as he studied the papers. And they're using dirty tricks to do it. Sam discovered that Patricia had secretly changed the maps before submitting them. This is completely against the law, he said. She cut off your corner and made it look like it belonged to the HOA all along. Meanwhile, things got worse at home. Every day, a new letter from the HOA appeared in my mailbox. $250 fine for improper agricultural equipment. $500 fine for keeping chickens. $750 fine for fence height violation. My neighbors started acting strange around me. Some wouldn't look me in the eye. Others crossed the street to avoid talking to me. Then my old friend Emma brought over a pie. I'm sorry about what's happening, she said. Patricia told everyone at the book club that your farm is bringing down house prices and that soon the whole neighborhood will be worth nothing because of you. I was shocked. That's not true. I know, Emma replied, looking over her shoulder nervously. But people are scared. Last month, the Miller family questioned her at a meeting, and suddenly they had fines for their basketball hoop, their mailbox color, even the type of flowers in their garden. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting. It was in the community center, a room packed with my neighbors sitting in neat rows. Patricia stood at the front in a crisp blue suit, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun. As you can see from these photos, she said, pointing to pictures of my farm, this eyesore is damaging our beautiful community. Property values have dropped 15%. I stood up. That's not true. Everyone turned to look at me. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. The farm was here before any of your houses, I continued. And I've checked. Property values have actually gone up 7% this year. Patricia's face turned red. Well, if they have, it's despite your farm, not because of it. After the meeting, I noticed Frank Reynolds, the HOA treasurer, looking uncomfortable. Frank had always been kind to me, buying my fresh eggs every Saturday. I caught up with him in the parking lot. Frank, what's really going on? Why is Patricia so determined to take my land? He looked around nervously, then motioned me closer to his car. I shouldn't be telling you this, he whispered. But Patricia made a deal with Cornerstone Enterprises, that big developer. They want your whole property for a shopping mall. My stomach dropped. The whole farm. Frank nodded. She gets a huge commission if she delivers your property. That's why she started with that corner, to break your spirit. She's been dipping into the HOA emergency fund to pay for lawyers. That night, I watched from my kitchen window as Patricia hosted a fancy party in her backyard. The HOA board members were all there, drinking wine and laughing. I noticed how she touched their arms when she talked, how she leaned in close to whisper things that made them nod. I couldn't sleep again. The next morning, I visited my elderly neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who had lived here even longer than my family. I remember when your grandfather fought the county over those property lines, he said, his wrinkled hands wrapped around a mug of tea. They tried to say he didn't own that corner back in 1973, but he proved them wrong in 1974. Got new maps made and everything. Do you still have any papers from then? I asked hopefully. Mr. Johnson shuffled to his garage and pulled out an old filing cabinet. I keep everything, he said proudly, handing me a folder. Inside was a newspaper article about my grandfather's victory, with a perfect quote from the judge stating that the corner belonged to our farm now and forever. I nearly cried with relief. When I showed the article to Sam, he grinned. This is exactly what we needed. Now we can prove Patricia knew about the correct maps and deliberately used the wrong ones. That afternoon, I was working in my greenhouse when a loud noise made me look up. A bulldozer was pushing toward my barn, with Patricia walking alongside it. I ran out, waving my arms. Stop. You can't do this. Patricia smiled coldly. Actually, according to our latest survey, this barn is 3 feet over the property line. It needs to come down. I stepped in front of the bulldozer. I have proof that you're using fake maps. I know about your deal with Cornerstone Enterprises. For just a second, Patricia's mask slipped, and I saw real fear in her eyes. Then she recovered, laughing sharply. You can't stop progress. By next month, this whole farm will be under concrete. The bulldozer driver looked confused. Should I keep going, ma'am? I pulled out my phone. Before you make that decision, you should know I'm recording this, and I have evidence of fraud. Do you want to be part of that lawsuit? The driver turned off his engine. I'm just doing my job, but I don't want legal trouble. Patricia's face twisted with anger. You'll regret this, she hissed at me. The HOA has more power than you can imagine. We'll bury you in so many legal fees you'll be begging to sell. As she stormed off, I noticed several neighbors had come out to watch. For the first time, they weren't looking at me with suspicion. They were looking at Patricia. I didn't know it then, but that confrontation was about to change everything. I had evidence of her lies, but I needed something bigger to stop her completely. And I was about to discover just how deep her corruption went. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw concrete pouring over my family's soil. Soil that my grandfather had tended with his bare hands. I got up at 4 a.m. and made a decision that would change everything. This ends now, I whispered to myself, looking at the photos of my parents and grandparents on the farmhouse wall. Their faces seemed to nod in approval. First thing Monday morning, I marched into the county courthouse and filed an emergency injunction to stop any more construction on my land. The clerk looked at me with sympathy as I showed her the photos of the concrete already poured. They did this without proper permits, I explained, my voice steady despite my racing heart. And I have proof they used fake property maps. While waiting for the judge to review my case, I met with Sam, my lawyer, at a coffee shop across from Patricia's fancy real estate office. Through the window, I could see her laughing on the phone, probably telling someone else about how she was going to turn my farm into a parking lot. The HOA's finances are a mess, Sam said, sliding a folder across the table. They're over $430,000 in debt after Patricia convinced them to build that unnecessary clubhouse last year. Many homeowners are struggling to pay the increased fees. I looked at the numbers, then back at Patricia through the window. How is she still in charge? Fear, Sam replied. She threatens anyone who questions her with fines, liens, even lawsuits. Most people can't afford to fight. But I could. My farm made good money, and I had inheritance funds I'd been saving to expand my apple orchard. Now I had a better use for it. What if I bought properties in the neighborhood? I asked. Sam's eyes widened. You'd need controlling interest to overrule her. That's at least 51% of the properties. Let's start with the homes facing foreclosure because of her ridiculous fees, I said. Within 2 weeks, my newly formed LLC quietly purchased 4 houses from desperate sellers. I offered fair prices and let them stay as renters with reasonable terms. Each property came with HOA voting rights, which I now controlled. Meanwhile, Patricia stepped up her attacks. She sent inspectors to my farm daily, claiming my chicken coop violated noise ordinances and my tractor was too dirty to be visible from the road. One evening, I spotted her walking along the edge of my property with a man in an expensive suit. They pointed at my barn and orchard, nodding. I recognized him from news articles, the CEO of Cornerstone Enterprises, the biggest developer in the county. I pretended to check my irrigation system, moving close enough to overhear. Once we get him out, we can break ground on the shopping center by fall, the man said. The anchor store is already committed. Patricia smiled. I've got another board vote scheduled for next week. We'll declare his barn a safety hazard and order demolition. And your commission will be ready once we close, he replied. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and recorded them. This wasn't just about parking anymore. They wanted my entire farm. That night, I called everyone I knew who'd bought from me at the farmer's market over the years. Many owned homes in nearby neighborhoods. I explained what was happening and asked for help spreading the word. By the next HOA meeting, I had quietly acquired controlling interest in 11 properties, just enough for majority voting rights according to the bylaws. The meeting was held in the community center. Patricia stood at the podium in a crisp blue suit, pointing to pictures of my farm on a slideshow. As you can see, she said to the crowded room, this agricultural eyesore is destroying our property values. The board has determined that the historic barn poses a safety risk and must be removed immediately. Several neighbors nodded. Some looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Patricia had trained them well. All in favor of ordering demolition, please raise your hands, she said, already smiling with victory. Hands started to go up. I remained calm in my seat at the back. The door swung open. Sam walked in with a court official. This meeting is adjourned, he announced, his voice filling the room. We have evidence of financial impropriety and fraudulent land surveys that require immediate investigation. Patricia's smile vanished. She clutched the podium. You can't just barge in here. Who do you think you are? I stood up slowly. All eyes turned to me. I'm the person who now holds controlling interest in Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association. The room erupted. People shouted questions. Patricia's face turned bright red. That's impossible, she screamed. Sam handed her a legal document. My client's LLC now owns 11 properties in this development, giving him 51% voting rights under your own bylaws, Section 7, Paragraph 2. I walked to the front of the room as Patricia read the document, her hands shaking. You've been running this neighborhood like your personal kingdom, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Using fake property maps to steal my land, taking kickbacks from developers, raising fees to push people out of their homes. Frank, the treasurer, suddenly stood up. It's true, he admitted, avoiding Patricia's glare. She's been moving money from the maintenance fund into a separate account. When I questioned it, she threatened to ruin my credit score. Patricia lunged toward me, pointing her finger in my face. You think you've won? My husband is on the zoning board. My brother works for the bank that holds your mortgage. You're nothing but a dirty farmer. 2 security guards that Sam had hired stepped forward as her voice became more hysterical. You can't do this. This is MY neighborhood. As they escorted her out, still screaming threats, I turned to my shocked neighbors. I didn't want to buy these properties, I said honestly. I just wanted to grow my vegetables and mind my own business. But I couldn't stand by and watch her bully everyone just to fill her own pockets. Eleanor Thompson, who lived across the street and had always been kind to me, stood up. What happens now? She asked, voice trembling. I looked around the room at all the faces, some familiar from years of living alongside them, others strangers who'd moved in recently. All of them looked scared, confused, but also hopeful. Now, I said, we rebuild this community together. starting with tearing up that concrete parking lot and turning it into something beautiful that benefits everyone. As murmurs of agreement spread through the room, my phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Patricia just called her developer friend. Things are about to get ugly. I looked up at my neighbors, who were starting to smile and talk excitedly about community gardens and lower fees. They had no idea what was coming next. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing like crazy. 12 missed calls and 37 text messages, all saying the same thing. Patricia had been spotted packing her car in the middle of the night. Was she running away before facing what she'd done? I jumped out of bed and threw on my clothes. No way was I letting her escape after what she did to my farm. Breaking news. The Maplewood Estates HOA president has disappeared after serious claims of stealing money, blared the local TV station as I flipped it on. My heart raced. The reporter stood right outside Patricia's empty house. My doorbell rang. It was Eleanor Thompson from across the street, still in her bathrobe and slippers. Did you see? She's gone. Eleanor's eyes were wide. After what you said at the meeting, showing everyone those papers about how you own most of the neighborhood now? I've never seen Patricia look so scared. I called for an emergency HOA board meeting that very day. The community center was packed. Everyone wanted answers. Some faces looked worried, others angry, and a few seemed hopeful. I stood at the front, my hands shaking a little as I held my notes. I know many of you are confused and upset. I began. But today marks a new beginning for Maplewood Estates. With my majority ownership, I'm calling for a new board election, effective immediately. Frank Reynolds, the treasurer who had warned me about Patricia's plans, stood up. I second the motion, and I have something else to add. He pulled out a thick folder. These are financial records Patricia didn't want anyone to see. She's been taking our maintenance fees and putting them in her personal bank account for years. Gasps filled the room. A woman in the back shouted, "That's why our community pool hasn't been fixed." The vote was quick. I became the new HOA president by a landslide. My first action? Hiring a forensic accountant to go through every penny of HOA money for the past 5 years. "You won't believe what we found," the accountant told me a week later, pushing a stack of papers across my kitchen table. Patricia wasn't just stealing routine fees. She was getting huge kickbacks from Cornerstone Enterprises, over $75,000 so far. They wanted your farmland for a mini-mall. With this evidence, I went to the police. They opened a criminal investigation for fraud and embezzlement. The local paper ran a front-page story. HOA president flees after fraud allegations. Local farmer takes control. Many neighbors who once sided with Patricia now came to apologize. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Jenkins said, her eyes wet with tears. "Patricia told us your farm was lowering our property values. She showed us fake reports. I should have checked for myself. Even the grumpy Mr. Williams from 2 streets over approached me at the grocery store. That concrete they poured on your land, it wasn't right. What can I do to help fix it?" That's when I got the idea for Community Restoration Day. 50 neighbors showed up with sledgehammers, pickaxes, and work gloves. Together, we broke up that ugly concrete parking lot piece by piece. Kids brought their little toy shovels. Teenagers who I thought never looked up from their phones worked tirelessly in the sun. "The soil underneath is in bad shape," I explained to everyone. "It'll need special treatment to grow anything again. We'll help," Eleanor promised. "Whatever it takes." We turned that damaged section into a community garden with raised beds for everyone to grow their own vegetables. People who had never planted anything in their lives were now asking me for gardening advice. Just when things were starting to feel good again, I got a certified letter in the mail. My hands trembled as I opened it. Patricia had been found in a nearby town. She was out on bail and suing me for emotional distress and illegal takeover of a properly established homeowners association. Her lawyer demanded $2 million in damages. Can she really do this? Sam, my lawyer, wondered aloud as we reviewed the lawsuit. After everything she did, people like Patricia never think the rules apply to them, I said. That evening, I walked out to check on my barn and froze. Spray painted across the wooden doors in bright red letters were the words, "This isn't over." I called the police right away. Officer Martinez took photos and shook his head. "Security cameras might be a good idea," he suggested. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Was Patricia out there? What else was she planning? The next morning, a news van parked outside my house. A reporter thrust a microphone at me as I stepped outside. How do you respond to Patricia Winter's claims that you orchestrated a hostile takeover of the HOA? She asked. I took a deep breath. This was my chance to tell my side of the story. I bought properties legally. I followed the HOA bylaws to the letter. What I didn't do was pour concrete over someone else's farmland or steal community funds. The reporter's eyebrows shot up. We'd love to do a full interview about these allegations. Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Frank, sounding panicked. You need to come to the community center right now, he said. Patricia's back. She's called her own meeting, and half the neighborhood is there. She's telling everyone you tricked them and that she has proof the land was always HOA property. My heart sank. Just when I thought we were making progress, Patricia was trying to turn everyone against me again. And worst of all, some people were actually listening to her. What would I find when I got to that meeting? And how many of my neighbors would be back on her side? I found myself staring at the bright red spray paint on my barn door. This isn't over. It screamed at me in angry letters. Patricia had crossed a new line. I took photos and called Sheriff Thompson right away. Within an hour, he was examining the vandalism. This matches the handwriting from her protest signs, he said, studying the paint. We'll add this to her charges. That night, I couldn't sleep. What if Patricia did something worse next time? The court date was still 3 weeks away. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Give up the farm or things will get ugly. I wasn't going to wait around to be threatened. The next morning, I installed security cameras around my property and hired a night guard. It cost money I didn't really have, but peace of mind was worth it. 2 days later, Frank called me in a panic. Patricia's been talking to other HOA presidents in nearby communities. She's telling them you're trying to destroy property values and that they should join forces against you. This was bigger than just my farm now. Patricia was building an army. I needed to show everyone who she really was. I called my old college friend Megan, who worked as a reporter for the local news. I have documents showing HOA corruption that affects thousands of homeowners. I told her. Are you interested? The story broke the next day. Megan's headline read, HOA president accused of fraud, developer kickbacks. The article detailed Patricia's schemes and included statements from neighbors who'd been bullied. The county prosecutor's office announced they were expanding their investigation. That afternoon, Eleanor organized an emergency community meeting at the local library. Nearly every homeowner showed up. I've lived here for 20 years, said Bill Jackson, standing up shakily with his cane. Patricia fined me $500 because my roses were the wrong color. I had to take out a small loan to pay it. Others shared similar stories. The dam had broken. People weren't afraid anymore. Patricia burst into the meeting, her face red with anger. This is all lies. He's manipulating you, she shouted, pointing at me. He wants to turn our beautiful neighborhood into a smelly farm. Eleanor stepped forward. Patricia, I have copies of checks you cashed from Cornerstone Enterprises. Do you want to explain those to everyone? Patricia's face went white. She backed toward the door. You'll all be sorry when your houses are worthless. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I wore my only suit and brought 3 boxes of evidence. Patricia showed up in designer clothes with 2 expensive lawyers. When the judge asked her to explain the doctored property maps, she blamed it on clerical errors. When shown proof of the money she'd taken, she claimed it was consulting fees. But when the prosecutor played a recording of her conversation with Cornerstone Enterprises discussing how to force me off my land, she couldn't talk her way out of it. Your Honor, Patricia's lawyer pleaded, my client was simply trying to improve the community. The judge wasn't buying it. Mrs. Winters, this court finds substantial evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You are hereby ordered to surrender your passport while awaiting criminal trial. Outside the courthouse, neighbors cheered. Frank gave me an awkward hug. We need to clean up this mess, he said. Will you help us rebuild the HOA the right way? I wasn't sure I wanted anything to do with an HOA ever again. But these were my neighbors. I'll think about it, I promised. That night, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Mr. Gonzalez, the quiet man who lived at the end of the street. He'd never spoken at any meetings. My grandfather had a farm like yours in Mexico before developers took it, he said softly. I have been watching your fight. You did what he couldn't. He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a packet of heirloom tomato seeds. For your new beginning. The next week, I agreed to become temporary HOA president while we rewrote the rules. My first official act was to tear up the concrete parking lot. Neighbors showed up with shovels and pickaxes to help. Even Frank brought his teenage sons to join in. The soil underneath was damaged, but not dead. A soil expert from the university said with the right treatment, we could bring it back to life. We decided to turn it into a community garden where everyone could grow food. 6 months later, Patricia's criminal trial ended with her sentence to 18 months in prison. Cornerstone Enterprises paid a massive fine and was banned from developing in our county for 5 years. On a warm spring day, I watched Eleanor's grandchildren planting strawberries in what used to be the concrete parking lot. Bill Jackson sat in a lawn chair, teaching them how to water properly. Mr. Gonzalez's tomatoes were already sprouting. My phone rang. It was Sam, my lawyer. Great news, he said. Cornerstone's illegal tactics have been exposed in 3 other communities. They're facing a class action lawsuit. The prosecutor wants to know if you'll testify. Absolutely, I said without hesitation. That evening, as the sun set over my farm, I walked the property line that Patricia had tried to steal. The new HOA rules protected my land and every green space in the neighborhood. We had transformed from enemies into partners. Frank joined me by the fence, holding a basket of fresh vegetables from the community garden. You know what's amazing, he said. Property values have actually gone up since we added the garden. Turns out people like living near fresh food. I laughed. Maybe we should send Patricia a thank you note in prison. She'd hate that, Frank grinned. A year to the day after the concrete was poured on my farm, we held a harvest festival. Children ran through the orchard playing tag. Neighbors shared dishes made from garden vegetables. Even the mayor came to cut a ribbon for our urban farming initiative. As I stood to make a speech, I saw unfamiliar cars pulling up. People from neighboring communities stepped out, notebooks in hand. We heard what you did, said a woman in a blue jacket. Our HOA is trying to bulldoze our community garden. Can you show us how to fight back? I looked around at what we had built from the ruins of Patricia's scheme. I think we can do better than that, I said. We can show you how to rebuild. That night, I sat on my porch watching fireflies dance over the fields my grandfather had tilled. The farm had survived, but it had become something more, a blueprint for change. One person with the truth really could stand up to the Patricia Winters of the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, the little guy wins.